This is the original esport racing game. This is iRacing.
A win for McAreevy and a win for Gaspers. And yet neither of them leads the points. Steve Elson has topped the championship charts through consistency with a pair of podiums. But what happens next is anyone's guess, because we go from one of the longest tracks on iRacing to one of the shortest. Tsukuba's Moto layout will be a nightmare of difficulty in passing and constant lap traffic. Can Elson keep up his streak? We'll find out soon as we get ready to watch round 3 of the Weekend Warriors, and you'll see it all live here on the Global Sim Racing channel and the iRacing Esports Network. Hi, I'm Joe Peak, and with me in the booth is Adam Young. Behind the scenes is our director, the Dr. Amjad Yaman, and he's using cameras provided by Ducky Beard. Adam, I have to admit, I've grown to enjoy hot lapping here myself whenever we have to create a new lap guide. It's just really addicting to rifle off lap after lap around this tiny little layout.
It is. I mean, and you get into a rhythm here because of how short it is. I mean, it's going to be the closest thing, I think, honestly, in road racing on iRacing that you're going to find to like a short track on the oval side, let's say like Martinsville. I mean, kind of flat, tight turns. And today, we're going to have 14 of those turns. We're running that 2000 Moto layout, so we're going to have that little chicane that you find in there for the motorcycles and stuff. And that's going to bring the track length today up to about 1.29 miles. This is one of the newer tracks on the iRacing service, so if you haven't had a chance to get around it yet, well, I suggest you go ahead and try to do it on your own. But hey, we got a broadcast to do, so we'll let Joe Peak do the honors here first.
All right, we're in the GSRC SRF, so let's do a lap around Tsukuba. Down into the first corner, expect most of the passes to take place here. What's going to be difficult is that the gearing in the Spec Racer is a little awkward for this hairpin. You might see some differences in approach depending on what gear the driver uses through there. As you weave through 3 and 4, you've got to make sure to line yourself up on the right for the braking into 5. The understeer this car suffers from makes it easy to get into the power too soon. Despite the heavy banking, the car wants to plow into the grass on the exit. Before you know it, you've got to switch sides for 7. And the Moto layout, you absolutely don't want to track out because of this added chicane. While it makes the approach up to the final hairpin slower, it also straightens it out quite a bit. It's a trade-off that might mean more attempts at passing without seeing much more success than the regular circuit. Like most hairpins, you'll want to square this one off to get as much speed as you can down the backstretch. This is the longest straight on the track, but you still won't be getting all that fast in the little SRF. Unfortunately, the final corner is both swift and can handle surprisingly late braking, so overtakes on your way in are probably going to be rare. Instead, expect mistakes mid-corner or on the exit to open up opportunities. But if you've kept it together, you've now hopefully finished a lap around Tsukuba. You see one of the quick laps that you do around here. That's frequently what people do around here, is just race by themselves, try and improve on that hot lap time. But if you want to improve on your hot lap times in a real Spec Racer 4, the Weekend Warriors are brought to you by the Hallett Race Shop. Hallett Race Shop is located at the Hallett Race Track near Tulsa, Oklahoma. They are a full-service SRF shop, an authorized customized servicer rep for the SCCA Enterprises, and the owners of the Hallett Racetrack. You can find out more information at hallettracing.net. Big thanks to them for sponsoring this season of the Weekend Warriors. I'm hoping that maybe eventually I can get down to Oklahoma to check that track out, because it certainly looks like a lot of fun. But before we do that, let's take a look at the championship. The Spec 1 points, as I mentioned, Steve Elson up at the top. He jumps up there with his second podium of the season at the Nürburgring. Donald Fitterer jumps up 2. And then how about David Gaspers with a much better race at the end of round 2? He jumps up 25 points. Daniel Sadro getting onto there, and C Love. That long circuit over in Germany really shuffled things around in Spec 1. What about the Spec 2? Did it have much of a similar effect over there, Adam?
Things always seem to get shaken up at the ring, and Donald Federer, though, still retains the P1 position. Of course, he had a pretty good day at the Nürburgring. 156 points total here so far for this season. C Love with 41 points. He's going to move up just one spot, but the biggest winner last week was Christopher Patterson, who rises 8 spots in the standings to bring it up to 3rd. Jeff Jacobson rises 4 spots, right now tied for 4th, along with Bob Kern, who also raises a spot and new on the S2 standings here for this week.
So for this race today, well, we're doing another 40-minute race, which is probably good. Not sure if these drivers would want to be doing close to 60 laps around here. They have one scheduled stop for fuel, and that's because, as you can see, they've limited the fuel cells compared to what the real cars can do. As always, they ration the points from 100 to 25, with the top 3 staying the same amount of points, so the podium always scores consistent points, just to give us a little bit more reliability in figuring out the championship when it comes down to it. The incident penalties have been upped this year, though. Look at that. It used to be 2 points for every 10. Now it is 3. That's to try and encourage that clean racing. That can affect the championship because it gets close sometimes. They do have a fast repair if they get any sort of damage, so that could be likely with how tight a confines that we're working in today. That pit lane entry is tricky. We'll have to go and talk about that a little bit later in the intro. Before we do, just a quick mention, you're watching this on the iRacing Esports Network. Definitely subscribe to them if you get an opportunity. All you got to do that is go to their YouTube page and click the big red button that says subscribe. Not only will you see the Weekend Warriors in your YouTube feed, but all of the World Championship Series, the official World Championship Series here on iRacing. Qualifying is taking place, and no surprises here. David Gasper's still up at the top. He's being chased by Hudaludis, and 1/10 or 1.5 tenths of a second might sound pretty close at most circuits, but around here, Adam, that's actually a decent gap.
It really is. I mean, you have your entire field spread out right now. I think the slowest qualifier that I've seen is Mike Lucas at 1:07. So you're sitting there less than 3 seconds dividing your entire field as put down times. Now, the problem with that, though, too, is that because of how short of a track it is, we're probably going to end up running into lap traffic at the end of this thing, maybe even by the middle of this thing. So that's going to be one storyline that we're going to be watching out there here for this afternoon.
Certainly. And, I talked about the pit entry here. I'm kind of curious because it's already tough to get around any fast corner in this car, but you've got a single lane that you got to take rather swiftly in a car that doesn't like lift throttle oversteer. So, I mean, what are you expecting today with that? Are we going to have any crazy moments, or do you think everybody's practice is enough?
I am expecting, chaos, to be honest with you. And that's not an argument. It's just that the lane to get into pit road here is probably about as wide as what this car is. There's so little margin for error, and you hit the nail on the head with that lift oversteer condition in the SRF. So you're going to have to really be damn. You see that pit lane there, right? A pit entry lane right there to the right there on Sadro's onboard. It's going to take a lot of skill, patience, and not only that, but also awareness of the guys around you when you're pitting, because if something were to happen to you, you're only going to one place. That's probably going to be out into the racing lane as your momentum carries you back out onto the track. So be looking for that. I think pit stops very well could be a story.
So we've got 6 minutes left. We're riding on board with Spider-Man sitting in 7th. I suspect we could see a lot of jumping around in here in qualifying since the laps are so short. Just a small bit of improvement could move you up or down. Miroslav Juracek currently holding down 3rd behind Hudaludis. Those 3 have not changed since we checked in. Elson, since I looked earlier in qualifying, has gone up from 7th earlier to now 4th. And he's only got 6 100ths to get onto the podium positions, at least in the start. He's on the front, or the second row for now. Here we see Jerry McAreevy, one of our previous winners this season, down in 9th, getting ready to finish a lap.
And you get an idea, that's the longest straightaway on this track, folks. And it's only about 400 or so meters long. So not very long at all, not very long to take a break right before you got to go into that sweeping right-hander and eventually onto the short front straight. But it is a different kind of beast racing around here, that's for sure.
Yeah, you mentioned that, and I'm realizing this might be the first time in a while we won't see a draft race or a fuel race with this league. It's I don't think you can really do either of those anywhere around here.
Really, the only place that you really truly can is on that straightaway. But you have such a short time window to be able to take advantage of it. But you do peak up to about 100 or so miles per hour going down the back straightaway, and you're getting back up to that speed briefly on the front straightaway as well, just because of how fast that last corner is. But it's not very long at all to be able to take advantage of any kind of drafting situation. You know, you've got to be on your toes. And not only that, you're talking about a racetrack here where you might be separated by lap by a couple of tenths from the person in front of you. They might be a tenth or two faster. And that's going to lead to a separation real quick where that draft won't take effect, because only at 100 miles an hour, that dirty air isn't going to be very far behind you.
And looks like, well, Daniel Sadro had popped up into fourth, but now it's Jerry McAreevy into third, bumping Juracek down to P4. And, oh my goodness, it is tight between fourth, fifth, and sixth place. I think there is less than a second between them, or less than a tenth between them, rather, I should say, if I'm seeing it correctly. Because Juracek only 2 100ths off of McAreevy, Sadro 5 1,000ths off of Juracek, and then Steve Elson half a tenth off of Sadro.
Already seeing lots of contact out there, and it's just qualifying right now, and seeing these guys trying to bang off each other.
Yeah, it's certainly going to be an elbows out sort of race, especially if you want to get any sort of passes done. Jerry McAreevy coming around on this lap. Not going to be an improvement. Last one still his fastest at a 105.3. He's got about 2 tenths to make up to get past Hootaludis. This is Nick Carty now coming around from P22. His fastest is a 106.4. And it was his last lap. This one not going to count for the number 18 car. And we talked about that lap traffic, so let's take a look at this and what lap times we're seeing. We said a 104.8 for David Gaspers as our pole time right now. We're taking out the outliers, we're looking at a 106 or 107 for our last cars. So 3 seconds difference, and they're doing it at about a minute a lap and then some. So we're going to see maybe in what, about 20 laps, them coming around to lap the back markers. Maybe earlier than that, honestly.
Yeah, it might just be right about that, and that's when I'm expecting to possibly start to run into some problems there. So it's and you know, the funny thing about that is it might be right about the time we start seeing these guys hit pit road. So that's just going to add to the complication factor there.
Well, if I was a back marker and I saw the leaders come in, I would take off to pit lane anyways, because
might as well.
Yeah, just save yourself time. We saw on screen Dimitri Hootaludis took the pole over Gaspers. He did a big jump, but it is now less than a tenth of a second between the number 27 and the 23. They have set themselves drastically apart from the rest of the field because it's half a second down to Jerry McAreevy in third. This is Steve Elson, who we just saw complete his last lap, but it's another one that did not count for our points leader. Let's see if Gaspers can respond. He's starting to run out of time. I think, well, this is an outlap for him, so he's going to get one more try here. Oh, no, maybe he's not, because he's not going to have the speed onto the front stretch, and every 100th of a second counts around here. Is he going to still go for it?
I'm going to be very interested to see how Gaspers is going to go here in this race. He's been pushing that car during qualifying. I believe he's leading the incident count and everything else right now in qualifying, and that's just because he's trying to get every little bit out of it right now. And it'll be very interesting to see what his race is like as far as what he's going to push in the race. When is he going to push, if he has to push?
Well, he's pushing right now.
It's very easy to pick up those off tracks here is what I'm trying to get at.
I gotcha. Well, look at just how close he's getting to the edge of track at every moment. Really hustling the car. 6/100ths of a second. Can he improve that here in this last go? Because the clock now ticks down to 0 and qualifying is over. Around the final corner, can the number 23 get ahead of Hootalutus? These two have been rivals for a while now in these SRFs. And the final lap is a 104.8. Is that enough? Ooh. Yes, it is. Wow. 17 thousandths of a second on the front row. That is just ridiculous. This is Juracek. He's currently sitting in 4th. Both he and McAreevy still out there. I think McAreevy might have already finished his, though. Let's see what the number 84 has got underneath him. Not enough, because he's coming into the pits. He abandons that. Who else do we still have running? Antonio Reese. Like this new paint job on Antonio, but that won't be a counted lap, obviously, for him. Seeing if we got anybody else able to complete. I think that's it. All right. With a very, very short pace lap, let's start our way through the grid today. David Gaspers put it onto the pole with Dimitri Hootalutus just not able to outdo David on pure one-lap pace. Jerry McAreevy will start 3rd with Miroslav Juracek P4. Daniel Sadro is in 5th, and row 3 is completed by Steve Elson on the outside in 6th. Chris Murakami, great qualifying for the 01 car. He'll start 7th. Christopher Patterson in 8th. And then 9th is Stevie Ray. Jason Perry, Spider-Man, not the typical qualifying we're used to seeing from him lately. He'll start in the top 10.
And coming up in 11th on the inside of row 6. Hey, Ramon's out there. I believe he missed last time out at Nürburgring, but he's here today, and he qualifies 11th. Edward Doherty out there in 12th position. Row 7's going to belong to Adam Bradshaw. Antonio Reese going to be in 14th. Donald Federer in 15th. Alongside him be Ryan Sorrell. And then Dominic Barreau in 17th. Rick Hansen 18th. Zachary LeVay in 19th. And 20th, Tom Gradwell.
Lee Tomlinson will start 21st, Bob Kern in 22nd. Nick Carty starts the next row in 23rd, followed by Jim McGill in 24th. P25 belongs to Jeff Jacobson. Gary Wolbo behind him in 26th, and Mike Lucas starts 27th today. Ian Wilson will be 28th. 29th belongs to Paul Hickey. Top 30 run it out by John Nielsen. The last of the field did not get a time, and Tim Hendrickson, 31st. Michael Shaw, 32nd. John Kern, 33rd. And Mark Geehan, 34th. I'm not actually sure if we will see any of those 4 start, because I do not see them gridded up yet. We'll find out.
Actually looking, I do not believe they are logged into the session right now. So 30-car field today.
Well, that's a relief to, I'm sure, many of the drivers. 4 less means 4 fewer that take up place on the track. See them gridding up on the backstretch. They only go around 1 corner here, and then they get going for 40 minutes in the Weekend Warriors. This is round 3 that we're watching. It is a relatively cool day here in Japan. 75 degrees track temperature, but it is a little bit windy. Don't think that'll affect them too terribly much. It is mostly blocked off by tight walls, buildings, trees you can see around here. I expect that they shouldn't have too much of an issue. The Porsche pace car peels in, gives David Gaspers control of the field. He waits patiently for the green flag to come out as they work around that final corner. McAreevy close up behind him. Green flag is out. It's a decent start for Gaspers, but an equally good one for Dimitri Hootalutus. He is to his outside, trying to pinch him in just a little bit, but can't take the position. Few cars going 3 wide back there as they all file into the tight turn 1, but I think they've got it.
Watching those guys spread out on that front straightaway was like watching an oval race at Pocono. Them guys going 4 or 5 wide, especially the inside line, getting jammed up a little bit. But up front right now, David Gaspers is able to edge out in front of Demetrius. And here in so we got a car upside down in the back part of the field.
Yep, I think that was started by Sadro, and the car upside down, I didn't quite make out who it was. Already took a tow to try and get out of the way. hard to avoid incidents with everyone so tightly packed on this little circuit. Thankfully, I think, though, other than the car upside down, everybody else able to keep going.
Yeah, it looked like, that was Jason Perry.
Oh.
He ended up, Spider-Man, having that problem out there today, and so not the day he wanted. It was a little bit of netcode that caught it. We'll catch a look at that later on. But first lap is going to go to David Gaspers.
Wow, look at Hootaludis, though, already on top of Gaspers. Their single lap pace was so close. I have a feeling we'll see a lot of this today. They've gapped McAreevy by about half a second. He could still get into this. The question is whether or not Dimitri can even make a pass anywhere.
That's going to be the hard part. It's going to go back to the old adage of catching him is one thing, passing him is another. Well, he didn't even have to worry about catching him just because he's been there right since the race start. But, getting around him is going to be really, really tough. And it might be a little bit like short track racing here. You might have to use a little bit of that chrome horn if you really want to get around the guy.
I wonder if they have a Greek equivalent to that. But we've got a replay of that first lap incident. Now, we know that Sadro started it. We know that Perry ended upside down, but I have no idea what happened in between any of this. Let's watch from the chopper.
What you're getting ready to see is Sadro is going to be coming around the hairpin here. He's going to get back on the gas. Right when that happens, the car decides it wants to go and break loose a little bit. And, you can see just kind of how it all happened there. Jason Perry gets clipped up on his lid. Sadro is able to continue. I didn't catch who that other car was. It was Patterson, I believe, actually, here. Was, in fact, able to continue as well. So Patterson, though, great run at the Nürburgring, but not exactly the way he wanted his race to start here for today. Is just kind of an innocent victim right there. And really, Jason Perry is really the bad luck guy right there, because he wasn't even technically touched. Like, he was just caught by the netcode a little bit as he was trying to get by the incident, and that's what sent him up and over.
Oh, we had a pass for third. Juracek got sneaky and overtook Jerry McAreevy up to the final hairpin. I think that was caused by McAreevy going a little wide out of the chicane. We got a replay here. Miroslav just pounced.
It's kind of the way to do it right now. Got the job done, that's for sure.
Watch from on board. McAreevy gets a real handful. Thankfully collects it, but even on this short little straight, momentum interrupted, and you can kiss that one position goodbye.
You can see just those top two of Gaspers and Hootaludis, just how much they separated themselves in that little bit of an exchange. And they continue to do so as those two continue to check out a little bit. And even then, Hootaludis having a problem staying right up underneath Gaspers compared to where he's at early in the race. In fact, he's going to go off. Woo! The front end of that SRF does not have a lawnmower blade, but I imagine at that speed it acts like one.
Probably feels more like it has a snow plow on the front, the way this car understeers. Let's check in with our Spec 2 leader, because we haven't looked at that yet. And Edward Doherty, all the way up to 8th, but he is not safe. Ramon Regalato's not far behind. He's probably more concerned about this car coming up beside him right now. Antonio Reese going to split them. The 77 bumps himself up to P9.
Good move right there. We're starting to see the field spread out here just a little bit. No surprise there. And but that S2 battle is just as tight. Here's some tires squealing. Oh, there it is.
That's Bureau.
Bureau losing the back end of that car in the hairpin.
And that, unfortunately, was Bradshaw, who was third in our Spec 2 race. Just coming up a little bit hotter than he expected to. Number 208 suddenly is facing the wrong way.
Yeah, I can't imagine the SRF doing too well when you have the back end lifted up off the ground. That might amplify the off-throttle oversteer a little bit.
Just a little. Behind them, a good battle. This is for 16th. LeVay getting overtaken by Rick Hansen down the backstretch. He might make it stick, but he came in a little bit hot. Could we see LeVay pulling over under? He thinks about it. Oh, but he loses it! And he spins, tries to keep it off the racing line. A hard hit to the pit wall. Thankfully, nobody else gets involved, but a lot of positions lost for the 223 car. Speaking of lift throttle oversteer. And the curb. Oh, yeah. We saw it bounce
right
around
in that
there.
transition right there, and he only caught the tires right there, so I'm wondering if maybe he has any kind of suspension damage. That'll be the one thing here, is that aero damage won't hurt you as much as it would other places.
Battle for the lead. Sorry, we're side by side. Hootalutis got his nose in down the backstretch. Gaspers maybe not fighting it as hard as we would expect. Looking for the over-under coming off the final corner, and he gets it. Carries his momentum. He's already halfway up. The Greek driver outbreaks him into the first corner. Could this just be a back and forth the whole way? Because he had to come in shallow. Hootalutis now looking for the run off the corner, but he doesn't quite get it. It was short-lived, but Hootalutis did have the lead for a moment.
Yeah, that was just precipitated by just a bad lap from Gaspers. He ended up running about 0.3 of a lap slower on that last one compared to what he had been. And because, don't forget, last time we checked in on these guys, Gaspers was starting to pull away a little bit, but that advantage is gone. As you saw with Hootalutis being able to pull ahead just for a little bit there, and he is hanging right off his rear suspension.
Oh, he's starting to get aggressive. You could see how Gaspers went defensive coming into the final hairpin. Unfortunately, Hootalutis not able to capitalize. He drops back about half a second, but for much of that lap, he was just clinging to the gearbox of the number 23. Gained some time through the final corner to complete yet another lap. Starting to get close to the pit window. Do you think maybe Dimitri is starting to think leapfrog? Maybe if I could pit early and get around him, or is that risky here?
No, I wouldn't do that. You know, like, these guys are running tight for 1-2. You got some separation, but once you get back there past 10th place, 11th place or so, which is where you would end up if you were to go down pit road, even get a little bit of fuel. Those guys, it's like a hornet's nest back there, and you're more liable to lose a lot of time in all that traffic than you would if you just stuck it out here right now. It's better to wait for Gaspers to make just a slight mistake.
This is one of those battles in the top 10. That's Edward Doherty, our leader in Spec 2. Reese managed to get by second in Spec 2. That was Regalado a few laps ago. Already caught up to the 294. Looking to try and find himself a nice run. And though he's decent, he loses a little ground as they pick up speed coming towards the final corner. Edward Doherty, his fight really is with Regalado, but I'm sure he'd like to keep this buffer between them. On the front stretch, down towards the first hairpin. Comes in a little shallow, little lock of the brakes for Antonio Reese.
I don't want to do that too much in these cars.
Can the tires overheat pretty easily in these things? Does it get slippery if you abuse them?
Well, it's that, and it's just the tendency of this car with not a lot of downforce on it. It's just you don't have a lot working for you. So you got to take advantage of every little bit that you have working for you. And as soon as you start locking up the tires and everything else, you're taking one of those things that's working for you away.
This is Bob Kern back in 17th. He's got a train of cars. That's McGill, Bradwell, Tomlinson, and Jeff Jacobson, all waiting for any sort of opportunity to open itself up. McGill incredibly close to Kern, who also finds himself letting off some tire smoke. He's close behind, but I don't think this was a good enough run to the final corner to offer anything.
But that's right there. You can see the hornet's nest that I was talking about, that if the leaders were to pit, that's what they would find themselves in right now. So they should realize that. They probably know that. And they're probably going to wait until that tank starts to go a little dry, or we start seeing more cars come down pit road. If you have already taken advantage of it, but I wouldn't expect our leaders to just yet.
Curran looking very much afraid for this position, because he went defensive down into the first corner when I didn't think that McGill had an opportunity to try to get by. They are trailing behind Rick Hansen. I'm trying to tell if they're actually catching him. You can see him in the purple and black car just up ahead. If they are gaining on him, then that'll get even more interesting as Kern has to play attack and defense.
Hoodaloo going for the lead. And going into turn 1. And he is going to take it. Gasper's going to be trying to come right back on him here. That was the one case where you can use a little bit of draft. You don't got a long time to use it, but Hoodaloo took advantage of it there.
Let's see, this is the final corner. Just focused on keeping himself nice and tight. Get on the power. Used it well. Look at him all the way off into that paved runoff. Just stuck his nose in. Decisive move from Greased Lightning. You can see that the 23 tried to pull that over-under, but it didn't quite work. And as you can tell by their paint schemes, these are teammates as well. So they don't necessarily want to take each other out, even though there's no team championship in this series. I want one or the other to take the win. And Gasper's getting back here. He's looking close.
I don't think he has quite the run. May take a look on the outside here. Thinks better of it.
Steve Elson coming in for a stop. Surprised he beat Stevie Ray to it. So he hits his stall. We also got Chris Murakami trying an early stop. Antonio Reese. Maybe these are a few of the drivers that are stuck in the mid-pack and have nothing to lose to take a gamble with a bit of alternate strategy. They're already in and out. Fortunately, Elson did not quite time it right with traffic. Look at this. That's Lee Tomlinson, who's sitting in 18th. Who's that spinning? That is Tom Gradwell. Used to these faster cars up at the front. I get the sense that Elson was not anticipating a car braking that early. He didn't get too much damage from that. Of course, around here, the aero damage really doesn't affect the car like it does.
Yeah, you're all right. As long as you don't hurt the suspension there, you're fine. But, you know, even then, you're hurting your suspension. That's something that's actually relatively easy in this car. So be careful with that.
This is on board with Tomlinson. Still fighting with Elson. And cars constantly spinning. I was looking at the timing and scoring. Who was that off track? Oh, excuse me. That was a replay.
Oh, and we got another, maybe the time the lead's changing hands here. While that's going on, Gasper's trying on the inside of turn 14 here. Going
to be a drag race to turn 1, but Gaspers has got the inside. Hoodaloo with a whiff of momentum in his favor is not enough to get it away. He slots into second. And they're getting ready to catch lap traffic up here. You got 2 cars. That would be Mike Lucas and Zachary LeVay. And these guys are catching. Stevie Ray ducks in. We ride on board with Hoodaloo. And looks like Bob Kern also going to take his stop. So this is really shuffling things up. Edward Doherty in Spec 2 all the way up to P5, though that is not legitimate. That is currently by others pitting ahead of him. You saw Gasper's blink there a minute ago. He has done that a few times. It's always come back just fine. So if you see him blink, don't panic just yet. Interesting to see Gaspers take what I would consider the traditional line into there, going wide. Dimitri awful close, but he doesn't stick his nose in. But interesting because you saw that Gaspers went wide into the final quarter, but it looked like Dimitri just hugged it shallow the whole way around, and it didn't look like it hurt him that much.
No, it really didn't, and I mean, he was right there. Now, granted, of course, when Gaspers ran out the grass just a little bit and killed some of that momentum, it probably helped just a touch, but he is still right there.
Oh, our Spec 2 leaders in. Edward Doherty takes his scheduled stop, overtaken by currently our highest pitter, Steve Elson, who finds himself now in 12th. You see the New Yorker returning to the track. Just ahead of him, quite a bit of cars battling, though. This is not what he wanted. That is Stevie Ray, though. That, I believe that is for position, because Stevie Ray has taken his stop.
Oh, somebody blew their engine up there. So saw gray puff of smoke. I don't know who that was.
Nick Carty, the dark blue, number 18, downshifted a little bit too quickly. And boom. Unfortunately, that was not a very suave move from Nick Carty, so he has to take a tow. Ramon Regalado, remember he was battling with our Spec 2 leader. He was second in that class. He's come in. So where's Doherty? Doherty's down in 20th. He's coming around the final corner now. There you see Regalado in his stall. Doherty passed the line. Regalado's out of his box. He's going, but he's not going to get him. Doherty, though. Oh, this is a lot of traffic as he sticks it inside of Tom Gradwell and moves himself up to 16th, trying to chase Stevie Ray through the field. We're already almost halfway through this race.
As you would expect at a track like this, these guys are still, there's still quite a few battles out there all over this racetrack, as some of these guys just cannot get separation from one another.
These are our two leaders. That's Gaspers up front, Hootaludis in second. They are gaining on traffic. Bob Kern, who's already taken his pit stop, and Jim McGill, so they really don't have a way to leap out of the way and take their pit stop, since theirs is already done. You're going to have to keep an eye on those blue flags when they start cropping up. Board with Hootaludis, who has fallen back. What was hanging at 4/10 of a second most of the time. The number 27 is now given a gap up to the number 23.
Yeah, and it's been a pretty consistent gap here the last lap or two. That lap traffic that they had to fight through really kind of helped widen that gap just a touch. Now, this would be at a point in the race where if I was Hootaludis, I might consider going ahead and maybe trying to make that pit stop just a little bit off cycle from what Gaspers is. But, like I said, just consider it. I mean, you don't necessarily have to do it. But that gap does continue to actually increase just a touch.
Driver who was our leader in Spec 2 had inherited it from the others who had pitted, has come in for his stop. That's Adam Bradshaw that you saw. Edward Doherty, who should re-inherit it soon, comes back around to pass him, but we're still waiting on Fitterer, Hansen, and Jacobson to take their scheduled stops in that Spec 2 class. This is your first time watching the Weekend Warriors, the way you can tell Spec 2 from Spec 1. Spec 1 is from 0 to 99 on their cars, and Spec 2 is 200 and above.
Now our leaders getting into the lap traffic once again, so Hootaludis able to close that gap by 4/10 of a second that last lap. So the separation going the other way here for a moment. They got a couple more cars right in front of them, including Bob Kern and Jim McGill coming up.
Yeah, they've been creeping up on these two, and now they've fully caught them, and not at the best places on track. Is Bob going to pull over? He's staying off to the right, letting them through. Brakes early. Nicely done by Kern.
And Hootaludis was really thinking of taking advantage of that situation. Man, he used up all that racetrack that last time through the hairpin. cannot quite make up any ground on Gaspers, at least at this point. They do have one more car right immediately in front of them. That's going to be Jim McGill, and I expect he'll probably let them by going into 1 or 2 here this next time by.
And poor Bob Curran, look at how much time that lost him on Jim McGill. That was a battle for position. So unless McGill gives up a similar amount of time, he's going to have to really hustle to try and get up and fight for that P22. Right now, though, McGill certainly not looking like he's... Well, there he goes. Now he's pulling off to the side. And that lets our leaders through. They got a bit of a gap up to the next one, John Nielsen. So they got some clear racing where they can just worry about one another for a couple laps. Coming towards the end of the pit window, it is Elson, still our highest pitter, just as the sun comes out. Haven't seen that for a little bit.
Be interesting to see what that does to the handling of these cars, because the entire time I've been in the session and practice and qualifying, I have not seen the sun yet. So this is the first time these guys might be seeing the sun out there here for today.
Yep. Keep half an eye on the track temperature. It's still sitting at 78 degrees. And our leaders looking to go side by side again. Dimitri with a great run off the first hairpin, but he's on the wrong side of the track for the second hairpin.
Deep on the brakes. Hot.
Over under for Dimitri Hudaludis, and he makes it stick. Clever driving from Greased Lightning to get himself up to the top spot. Now, granted, if Gaspers hadn't have made that error, he probably wouldn't have been able to get by, but even still, he just jumped on that as soon as he saw that car slide to the high side.
The question becomes, when will they pit? You know, this very well could come down, Joe, to who's going to have the better on and off of pit road. I mean, who's going to be the bravest going around that pit entry and able to grab that 1/10 or 2/10 of a second that might be key in the race at the end?
Yeah, and they haven't been hitting as much traffic as I would have expected, because I feel like that maybe would have caused one of them to become inclined to try and come in. Because if you're going to have traffic, whether or not you stay out or go in, you might as well go in, do something different from your rival. We're checking in on Antonio Reese. He's back up to 9th, already having taken his stop. Still see a lot of cars ahead of him that need to take their fuel, so I wonder if the number 77 could be looking potentially even at a top 5. Lee Tomlinson giving chase on Reese as he absolutely slides it around the corner. Stevie Ray says, thank you very much, I'll have a piece of that, but just can't get off the first hairpin with enough grunt. Still pokes his nose in down into the second hairpin, and he's given space, so I guess Tomlinson, well, now he's going to fight a little bit maybe. No, he brakes early, still side by side through the chicane. I haven't seen this before. Is this going to work out? Even Tomlinson holds him at bay and slows them both up. Chris Murakami now looks around the outside, coming into the final hairpin. That's Edward Doherty behind them, who will, we believe, inherit the Spec 2 lead. Stevie Ray nearly getting into Tomlinson. Almost looking 3 wide. Chris Murakami looking to push the issue, thinks better of it, ducks in behind, but now that opens the door to Doherty. 2 by 2, it is Noah's Ark into the final corner. Bobble from Tomlinson, tries to desperately hold on to the grip on the outside of the corner. Stevie Ray comes out on top in 10th, which now becomes 9th with more cars pitting. Doherty taking another position, getting inside of Tomlinson down into the first corner. Murakami looks to take that one back as he gets his nose in, but it's not going to happen this time.
We don't need to go to it, but while that was going on, what an intense battle that is. Gaspers is the first one of our leaders to take the pit road journey.
It's going to take him down to the very first stall. Where is Elson? Elson nowhere near to try and get up to him, so I think he has no worry. Gaspers, where's traffic? He's coming out now. And I think he's actually got relatively clear track. Gary Woolbolt is in front of him, but not very closely in front of him. This might have timed out perfect for the Diatch driver. At the same time, Hudaludis has Donald Fitterer in front of him and costing him a little bit of time. Oh, but they both need to come in. No, Fitterer was trying to pull off the racing line and let him through, but Hudaludis wanted to pit. That could be crucial tenths for Hudaludis. Let's find out right now. Gaspers coming down the backstretch, the number 23, still sandwiched between a couple other cars, both who have pitted and are a lap down. One's going to pull off to the side. That's Woolbolt letting him through. Ludis is out. He's on his way. Here comes Gaspers watching from above. It's going to be very, very tight. He's got the inside. Gaspers can't get the position away. Ultra close between these two. The fight's not over. Coming off the corner, Gaspers manages to keep it to the inside coming into the next hairpin, but this screwed him up last time as he went deep. He learned his lesson, and he gets by. You can't shave it any closer than that. Wow. Literally coming out wheel to wheel after all that. Just fantastic stuff. Not a single touch between them, and Gaspers manages it. Now, we're still waiting on Miroslav Juracek. The number 84 is leading this race, but he's yet to take his stop. He just went by the pits, so he's going to be able to go one more around. And that's one nice thing I actually like about these short tracks, Adam, is that we can get more variety in these pit stop strategies.
You can, all of it adds an extra dimension to it. And as you saw, there's an extra dimension too when you're having to deal with the lap traffic trying to get on the pit road too. I mean, it's that much more, I guess, entertaining for everybody involved in a way. I mean, whether it's good entertaining or bad entertaining, it's still entertaining. As far as having to deal with the lap traffic and stuff, and that's one thing right there that I would like to say is that Gaspers almost runs off. What happened there with Ludus, that's a perfect part where you can communicate the fact that you're getting ready to come on pit road. That way that lap car doesn't know.
Sorry to interrupt. Hudaludis was just to the inside, and he almost made it past stick. Sorry there, Adam, but you saw Gaspers have his problem. That opened the door for Dimitri. He just could not seal the deal. Go ahead with your points.
Oh, you're fine. I was wrapping it up. It was just that, it's like a little bit of communication there could have saved Hudaludis a lot of time with communicating the fact he was coming down pit road.
Now, Daniel Sadro fans, might be looking back behind them and say, Daniel Sadro's in fourth. Mention it. Well, he hasn't stopped yet. Daniel Sadro needs to come in, so he's going to lose some more spots. He's riding behind them, and we kept saying you might not be able to use the draft. Maybe he's getting just a little bit extra time each lap with this. We don't know. Right on board with Dimitri, still trailing Gaspers, who will, we believe, inherit the lead once Juracek comes in. Juracek going to go another lap around. It's him, Sadro, Lee Tomlinson, and Todd Gradwell, the last drivers who need to take their pit stop. They do not have enough fuel, if this is your first time watching Weekend Warriors, to make the entire race, so they must come in.
Yeah, right now, Juracek is just trying to get every little bit he can, maybe in that clean air, and see if maybe he can do a little something with this thing. But at some point, Hudaludis or Gaspers will be taking back over the lead of this race.
It depends how traffic plays, because they do have Dominic Bureau in front of Gaspers and Hudaludis. So we'll see if the number 208 pulls out of the way. while we're talking about this, our leader in the Spec 2 as another defensive move from Gaspers down into the final hairpin. Hootaludis still having to sit behind. And Gaspers trying to use that draft anyways as the lapped car Bureau pulls out of the racing line for them. But our Spec 2 leader is still Doherty in P10. He is about, actually, 4 seconds ahead of Ramon Regalado, second place in Spec 2. So really no threat from the 288 now that the pit stops have cycled through in the Spec 2 class. Nine minutes to go on the clock. Usually that 10-minute mark is where we see the pit window close at most tracks. Through the chicane, up towards this final hairpin. Multiple times now Dimitri has poked his nose in. This not going to be one of those laps. Thankfully for them, they haven't had any traffic in a while. Bob Kern is the red and white car you see in front of them. They've got a few laps before they catch him. And Sadro pits. So does Juracek. Wonder if this is that final lap of what anybody can stretch it, even with a light right foot. Our two leaders easily go by. There's McAreevy. I believe he was in the battle with Juracek earlier on, but I don't think that's the case anymore because Juracek is out and McAreevy just coming onto the front stretch. That is a big gap between the two.
Yeah, that really worked in Juracek's favor. He had a lot of time there without a lot of cars around him, so he's able to just click off laps. And during that time span, I mean, he was running solid minute 5 laps. So, great strategy move there by Juracek to pick up a solid spot there.
So what does this do to our order now that we've got drivers, all drivers have finished their stops? Well, one of our hard chargers is Antonio Reese in P7. The number 77 started this race 14th and has managed to find his way forward to a top 10.
And that instant there on the first lap where Jason Perry went upside down, he did a great job, taking advantage of the chaos there. He was able to pick up a lot of spots right away, and you see where that got him. So good run from Antonio Reese here today.
Perry, who we see on screen, is taking his second stop, unfortunately, because he had to take a tow to bring it in. Oh, is this our leaders that we see on screen? Yes, it is. That was Kern trying to get out of the way. Dimitri is going to have every inch of the rear of Gasper's car memorized by the end of this race. Up in front of them is Lee Tomlinson. We have 17 cars remaining on the lead lap, Tomlinson being the final one. Just interesting how every time we see them come into that final corner, Dimitri likes that much shallower entry. And it seems to be working once again. Defensive move from Gaspers. A little bit of an early braking from Dimitri. Maybe trying to square him up. Whatever it was, doesn't look like it's going to work.
Yeah, right now for Dimitri there, it looks like that shallow entry is giving him a chance to really power that thing off the corner, and he's getting that slide advantage over Gaspers. And the problem is that Gaspers is caught on. It's now kind of running a little bit more of a defensive line through there. So I think all Hootaludis there is going to have to try to find a different way to get around Gaspers.
That was Paul Hickey we saw duck off out of the way. Oh, way too deep.
Mistake.
This is exactly what Hootaludis needed. He gets off the corner. That car spinning is Hickey. He didn't hit anything. Let's stay with this battle to the final corner. Dimitri's got the inside, and they've got traffic in front of them. Could this play a part? Dimitri almost a little too deep into the corner as he almost slides into Gaspers. He's got the momentum, and he's got the inside. Great move by Tomlinson to pull out of the way, but this battle is not over. Another slide, a little bit of a touch. 2 touches, and Gasper's off course, trying to get it back on. Brings it back to the pavement after a little bit of rallycross. Let's watch that one again.
Just goes in a little hot and just ends up just rubbing fenders, and then Gasper's keeping the throttle down and holding it down, able to keep it off everything after a little drive in the grass, and still right there on the back of Hootalootis. This is not over yet.
Yeah, and I don't really put anything on Gasper's on that one. He couldn't have known that Dimitri would start to lose the car the way he did. Credit to both drivers for coming away from that one. I think 2 lesser pilots would have probably wound up in the barriers. And as you mentioned, Gasper's still less than a quarter of a second behind Dimitri Hootalootis. Takes a little bit of a peek down into turn 1. Very strong on the brakes, too, you got to say. Oh, this time it's Hootalootis who's off track. He holds to the left side. Gasper's knows this is a chance. He ducks up to the outside of the banking of the second hairpin, takes it in deep once more. The track's going to switch back into 7. Is this going to be enough? He starts to gain. They're wheel to wheel now. Oh, and I think they touched again.
They did, but once again, Gasper's keeps his foot in the gas even though he was off the track and still within fighting distance here, except he gets really to the inside of that corner, starts bouncing a little bit. That's going to cost him just a touch of time. But we're getting down here with, what, 2 minutes, 30 seconds or so left in this one, so they should be able to get at least 2 laps out here before we get the great white flag.
You compared this place to Martinsville, and it's looking like Martinsville, the way these two are racing right now. Contact 2 times in the last couple minutes.
Yeah, pretty much the only difference is right now is we're not seeing the cars bounce off the concrete. You know, that's about it. But damn, the tight battle.
My only hope is it doesn't wind up like Martinsville last year and we get a little bit of that chrome horn deciding the race. And unfortunately, this is so exciting for the lead. We haven't really been able to cover that Elson got overtaken by Sadro. He's moved himself into the top 5. This has been a fantastic race for the 51.
And for what it's worth, I have the strangest urge to go set up a fun race at Martinsville in the SRF now. So, just saying.
I'm down for that. We'll see what the audience thinks, but 2 minutes left to go. We're not going to get the white flag this time by. They'll still have a couple more. It's going to be 2 to go for our drivers. A little bit of traffic in front of them. Jim McGill up next. An incredible... Go ahead.
I was going to say, Hootalootis was taking that really shallow entry into 1 now. I mean, he's adjusting his line. He's driving by his mirrors now.
Absolutely. Gasper's almost gives him a shove into the hairpin. And what is McGill going to do? He pulls offline. Beautifully done. Keeps from interrupting this. What I was about to say before is even with all this hard fighting, they are 12 seconds ahead of 3rd place. Miroslav Juracek is almost a footnote getting a podium here today.
And that's not to shy away from him. I mean, great pit strategy and everything else to keep him up there and everything. And he's ran himself a great race. But right now, this battle between Hootalootis and Gasper's just stealing the show as Gasper's feels like he was going to try to take a peek there going into 14. Thinks better of it. He's going to see what kind of run he can get here on the front straightaway.
Gasper's basically is running for every race win he can at this point, not thinking about the championship. He's deep on the brakes here on the white flag lap. Into the first corner, that's not going to produce anything, but he stays with him, gets a good run off the corner. David Gasper's on Dimitri Hootalootis. This time looks around the outside, takes it in incredibly deep, maybe too deep. He gathers the car together, doesn't get the spot, but also doesn't lose time. He's still on the rear bumper of Dimitri Hootalootis through the chicane. Dimitri sliding around a little bit, maybe feeling too much pressure now. This could be the last opportunity, but Gasper's sticks his nose in at the last moment. Oh, can he get it off the corner? Is this going to be a drag race? Hootaludis has the momentum, just barely. Could he pull over and defend? No, he can't. Here comes Gaspers, back at him. He's now side by side in the final corner, but can he make it stick? Tires smoking through the turn. The momentum goes back to Hootaludis, and at the line, Dimitri's gonna take it. Absolutely incredible. Juracek around the final corner to take third. And also, by the way, a quiet race for Jerry McAreevy to get himself a P4.
And Sadro and Elson had that great battle there with Sadro coming out on top. Then we're having Antonio Reese coming home in 7th. Stevie Ray is going to be a few seconds behind those guys. Doherty, Bradshaw, Sorrell, and Fritterer. That's going to round out, Hansen. Can't forget Hansen. That's going to round out your cars on the lead lap as they come around.
Yeah, nobody looking like they are in a battle in these final few corners. So I think we got some time. Let's look at the replay of this last lap battle. Look at this, off the final hairpin. It looked like Hootaludis had the speed to start pulling away, and then suddenly it's almost like a side draft situation. He just started coming back at him.
I wouldn't be surprised that's exactly what that was, Joe. I mean, that had all the looking of a side draft, but I've never seen a side draft at only 100 miles an hour, but I guess I've seen it now.
Yeah, I didn't know that was a thing in the SRFs. At the line, what you're seeing there is 1.5 tenths of a second for that win. Just beautiful between Hootaludis and Gaspers. Respectful, hard racing. That's going to take us to the break, though, here on the Global Sim Racing channel. We'll include the unofficial results as well as driver interviews. But stick around, because on screen, you're going to see all the upcoming races here on the GSRC. Welcome back after another stunning finish here at Tsukuba. in the Weekend Warriors. I'm not sure how we're going to top that for a while. It's been a bit since we had such a close finish, and I think it is one of the more memorable ones we've ever seen, with Dimitri Houdaloutis just barely eking out Gaspers defending on the final corner. Gaspers taking second, and Miroslav Juracek a distant third, unfortunately. Still gets the points for it. Jerry McAreevy takes fourth, and Daniel Sadro grabbing a top 5. Steve Elson finishing behind him. Tried to take an alternate strategy on pit stops and unfortunately was not able to give him much more than where he started in 6th. Antonio Reese, as I mentioned, in the middle of the race, starting 14th, finishing 7th. Definitely a hard charger for me. Steve Uray took his traditional early stop, but it didn't produce much. He still finishes 8th. Edward Doherty was our winner in the Spec 2 race today. He gets a nice 9th place. Adam Bradshaw, second in that Spec 2, rounding out our top 10 overall.
Yeah, and rounding out that Spec 2 podium, you will find Ryan Sorrell out there as well. Donald Federer coming home in 12th position. Rick Hansen in 13th. Jim McGill in 14th. He is the first car, 1 lap down. Lee Tomlinson, Dominique Moreau, we saw his problems earlier on. Bob Kern, Zachary LeVay in 18th. Tom Bridewell 19th. And Jeff Jacobson rounds out your top 20.
21st is going to be Chris Murakami, also a lap down. Gary Wolbel, 22nd, and Jason Perry. Despite being on his lid at one point, took the tow, got back out there, captured a 23rd. Probably going to be a drop week for him, I suspect. Christopher Patterson behind him in 24th, and John Nielsen, 25th. Then we get to a first car 2 laps down. That's Mike Lucas in 26th. Ramon Regalado, 27th, 4 laps down. Now we get into DNFs. Paul Hickey, 28th. Nick Carty, 29th. Ian Wilson, 30th. And then, of course, Hendrickson, Shaw, Kern, and Gehan did not start today. With that, we've got our winner ready to talk to us, Dimitri Houdaloutis, who I'm sure has had to calm his nerves after that one. We've seen some intense races in this series, but I don't think we've seen one as intense as this race in all of our coverage, Dimitri.
Good evening, Joe. Man, it was really intense. It was exceptionally fun race. David is, it's the staple here. He's a living god among us in the Spec Racer, and I have no words to describe this race. It was amazing fun and really enjoyable in the end.
So the pit stops happened, and I assume you wanted to try and pull an alternate strategy to Gaspers. Talk us about both the entry, because it looked like a little bit of an embarrassing miscommunication, and then the exit coming out side by side with David.
Yeah, that was a miscommunication on my part, because I thought that the car in front of me was Daniel Sadro, with which we are together on Discord while racing, and I was yelling, I'm pitting, but I didn't notice any change of of position by him, and I think the paint skins were pretty similar between those two guys, and it became really really difficult. I think I lost some time, but at the end it didn't matter a lot.
Yep, you still managed to get the win. Now, how about those final few laps? I think we counted at least 2 times, possibly 3 times, that you and David touched. Are you guys pretty used to that, banging wheels at this point, or do you tend to try and stay away from that just in case?
It's all about the risk that you can take. If you want to pass in the Spec Racer, you must be really close to the other guy. In this particular case, we had some major netcode, especially in the last incident, at least half a meter. I don't know the equivalent in the Imperial units. And fortunately, we both survived with some wobbling and stuff. And I also waited for him, because it wouldn't be just. It wouldn't be fair to make a gap. It's really difficult to close the gap here. So I think it was better to have him on my toe and continue as we started before the contact.
Well, it gave us a lot of excitement, and I have to imagine our viewers just as much excitement. Congratulations on a victory. Go back and watch this one, because it probably looks just as fun from outside the car.
Yeah, this is exactly what I'm going to do, Joe. Cheers.
All right, that was Dimitri Houdaloutis, our winner today. Adam's going to talk to David Gaspers on the other end of that fight.
Yeah, David. Hey, Hula Lewis is just in here, and he describes you as a living god with the Spec Racer Ford. And I got to say, after some of the moves you pulled out there today, I sort of got to agree. We've seen that kind of activity out of you before, but just in that tight wheel-to-wheel confines. In a perfect track for it. I mean, what was it like from your seat?
I don't know. It's just really hard to overtake here. And when it got, from my point of view, really annoying towards the end with that netcode in the chicane, because after that I was about 7 times back and only had the chance in the last corner, but it wasn't really a chance.
Well, even then, I mean, it was still intense side-by-side racing for a pretty decent chunk of this race. Did you think that maybe you could have gotten him on the pit cycle there? And he ultimately ended up coming out right alongside you. But was there ever a hope that maybe that's where you can pounce and maybe separate yourself from him?
I don't really think about what I do at pit stops. I don't like the pit stop races at all in general. So I just stop at some point.
Well, fair enough. But overall, great race for you here for today, and we're expecting you guys to be pretty close again. Now, of course, Tsukuba being just a tight confines, real narrow track. You mentioned how hard it is to pass. What are you thinking going in next week into Silverstone?
We're running the international version, I think. So I have no idea, but I don't know the layout.
Okay, well, fair enough. Well, hey, I know you wanted that win today, but still, second place, be a great points day for you, and we'll see you next week.
Yeah.
That was second place, David Gaspers. We now have fifth place finisher Daniel Sadro ready to talk to us. Daniel, we saw you and Steve Elson take almost complete mirror strategies to one another. He went in as early as he could. You waited out until late as you could, and you still wound up next to each other. Talk about that battle at the end.
Well, I can't talk about that battle without, first of all, apologizing for lap one, where we had a great battle lap one, and then I just got a little far out onto the curb, got squirrely, and then I took out Christopher Patterson, which is a real shame because he had an incredible lap time, and then of course he hit Jason Perry, so I have to start out with an apology. As far as the pit strategy goes, yeah, I was a little surprised to see so many people go in early. I felt that it was going to be best to wait if you could, and then just I was able to make up all the positions I had lost and come out within about a second of him. So yeah, that was incredible.
It looked pretty good from our view. We were just sad we couldn't show more of it because of the battle for the lead that was happening almost all race long. So this Moto layout actually surprised me and how good of a race it put on. What are your thoughts now that you've tried it? Do you like this a little bit better than the normal Tsukuba layout, or do you not happy with that chicane at it in?
Oh, well, I like most of the tracks that we go at. I'm kind of I'll drive anything anywhere if I can. I think it makes the chicane definitely makes it more challenging, and so I appreciate the challenge. I appreciated Nürburgring, and that's a big challenge too. So I mean, I like it as a challenge. I don't necessarily know if it made the racing better or not. Yeah, that's for the audience to judge, I think.
Well, still, congratulations on managing a top 5. The competition looked pretty fierce out there today, and I'd say you earned that one the hard way.
Well, thanks, and have a great weekend, you guys.
There's Daniel Sadro, 5th place finisher. One last discussion that we've got. Adam is caught up with Donald Fitterer, who we really didn't get to show a whole lot.
Yeah, Donald, at least from our perspective, you kind of had a little bit of a quieter race there once you got out of the first few laps. What was it like from your seat?
Well, I really didn't have pace for this one, and I just tried to settle in and not make too many mistakes. I had one slowdown, and my pitting was less than stellar.
And that brings us to an interesting point. Like, what was the hard part about pitting here? I mean, we're thinking up in the booth that it was probably that pit entry and kind of how tight it is. Is that where you ran into a problem?
Yeah, I went off into the grass a little bit on that corner coming into the pit, the little sharp one. And the fact that we needed a little bit more than 1 gallon, but we didn't need 2.5, which is how the separation is when you go to fuel the SRF. So I was trying to get it just a little bit above 1 gallon, and I just messed it up.
I understand. Now we're going to Silverstone next week. You think you'll have a better day there?
I'm far more comfortable at Silverstone than I'll ever be at this track, that's for sure.
Okay, I'm guessing just a little bit more wider for you and a little bit more room to move around. Does that about sum that up?
I agree. Plus the fact that I've had years of experience at Silverstone, and I think this is the second time I've been on this track, for the week.
All right. Well, hey Donald, appreciate you stopping by, man, and we'll see you again here next week.
Cheers, Adam. Thanks.
That was Donald Fitterer, 12th place today, 4th in that Spec 2 race that we had. But it's going to close us out. And of course, before we go, a big thank you goes out to our sponsor for this season, Hallett Race Shop. You can check them out at hallettracing.net. Again, they both have a track and a shop there that you can check out if you're a race fan. And maybe if you want to take a spec racer out there in real life. A big thank you to iRacing for putting us on the iRacing Esports Network. When you get a chance, make sure and subscribe. That is, of course, on iRacing's YouTube page where they've got a big red button that says subscribe. That's all you got to do, and you'll get everything in your feed. Thanks goes out to the companies that provide the software and hardware for our broadcast listed here on your screen. And additional thanks go to June Lalonde, who provides our wonderful music. See the screen for how to get a hold of more of their great work. Thanks to the team today, Adam, Amjad, and Dougie. If you'd like to find out more about GSRC, including upcoming races, you can find it at globalsimracingchannel.com. You can also check us out on social media. We're on Twitter at GSR Channel, Facebook at Global Sim Racing Channel, and Instagram at GSRC_Graham. As we mentioned, going over to England for Silverstone. However, it's not the full GP course. This is actually a pretty fun little shortened version. I highly recommend checking that one out on April 7th, next Sunday at 3:45 p.m. Eastern. We also have upcoming races for other series listed on the screen, so check those out and mark them down on your calendar. But until next time, race clean, race hard, see you on the track.